Good morning and welcome to the SDS2 2015 Fabricator and Job and Member Edit Redesign webinar. If you have any questions during, please feel free to type them in the questions area. Fabricator and Job. Why is the Fabricator now located inside of the job? The reason for the fab in the job is so there is one project file with the flexibility to change fabricators. Inside of the job folder, you can have multiple fabricators associated with the job to allow for the job to be switched between imperial and metric, or for different sequences to go to different fab shops and follow each fab shop standard. In version 2015, the path to follow to find the fabricator, you find the 2015 data directory, the jobs folder, and then inside of the fabs folder. Fabricator folder is still inside of the data directory. You can find this path by going to 2015 data directory and then the fabs folder. This folder is strictly used for converting and storing fabricators. This will be discussed a little later. When creating a new job, SDS2 will have the job and fabricator options on the same screen. The program will also create a master fabricator at this time. The master fabricator will control standard piece marks that are stored in setup. This includes your standard clip angle, shear plate, and end plate piece marks. So if we go to the main menu, here we will click on the Change button in the upper left-hand corner. Then click on New. So we see here it starts with your project. If you have different repositories set up, you will have the option to pull this down. Next is where you set your job name, followed by the master fabricator name. Next is the project copy options. You can choose a repository and then the source job name. If you specify a source job name, so if I wanted to select a job to copy from, let's say I wanted to copy from my default, you will notice that the fabricator up above here has become unavailable. SDS2 will copy the fabricator from the selected job. If we clear this out, we see that fabricator is now active again. To copy an external fab from the fabs folder right inside of the data directory, you can check this Copy Fabricator From checkbox. And now you can copy either from a job or from an external fabricator. You can select Browse and then double click to select the fabricator. If you select an external fabricator to copy from, units will now be unavailable when copying a job or fabricator while creating a new project. So if I copy from a different project here, and we see that the units are now grayed out because they will be copied from the selected fabricator. The rest of the Create New Project dialog remains the same. Multiple fabricators can be used in one job. These are called secondary fabricators, which have access to all of the setup except for the standard piece marks. To create a secondary fabricator, you go from the main menu, select Job or Fabricator options, and then you have a Change Fabricator. So from the main menu, if we click on Job or Fabricator options, along the top in the upper left-hand corner we see the Change Fabricator option. Also along the top are the current fabricator and the master fabricator for the current job. Here we're going to click on Change Fabricator, and we see that the master fabricator is the only one listed here. I'm going to click on New. I'm going to specify the new fabricator name. We'll call this Webinar 2. Also, you can copy from either a job or an external fabricator. We're going to make this a new fabricator. And we will make Webinar 2 units be metric. Click OK. And now we see here that the secondary fab that I just created is now the current fabricator. So any changes made will be applied to Fab Webinar 2. Be aware of the current fabricator indicated in Job or Fabricator options here. This will determine which fabricator any changes to setup are made to and affect members and material that are processed and detailed. So the changes we're going to make to Webinar 2, going to go into standard fabricator connections. And we see here that the shear plate standard piece marks, end plate standard piece marks are grayed out because these are controlled by the master fabricator. Next we will go into shear plate setup and click on combine beam and vertical brace shear tabs here. We hit OK through here, and we're going to open up the model with the current fab as Webinar 2. Open up a view. Okay. And we see here that we have two separate shear tabs because it has not been marked for processing and it's still using the master fabricator settings. So if we mark these for processing, process and create solids, we see now that it is a shared shear tab. So it affects the model and drawing editor. Webinar 2 is a metric fabricator. So if we click on Detail Erection Views, we're going to annotate the erection view, and we're going to detail the roof framing plan, go into Drawing Editor, take a look at our roof framing plan, and we see that the dimensions are now in metric. Now we are going to switch back to the master fabricator. To do this, we go into Job or Fabricator options, change Fabricator, select Webinar 1, which is our master fabricator. Say OK and OK. At this point, if I were to mark everything for processing, it would still be using Webinar 2, the secondary fabricator, because you must close out of the model to update the current fabricator. So we'll have to close out of our model, make sure which fabricator we are in. So we see that we are in the master fabricator, which is Webinar 1. And now we can go back into modeling. Once again, we see that this is still a shared shear tab. Mark these for processing. Process and create solids. And they are two separate shear tabs. Now we are going to detail a member. Couple beams here. Go into Drawing Editor, and we will see that they are detailed in Imperial. If we open up the erection view, it is still in metric. So even though we are now in the master fabricator, which is Imperial, the erection view stays in metric because it was detailed with the secondary fabricator, which is set to metric. So at this time, if I were to redetail that erection view and annotate it, rough framing plan. So my current fabricator is Webinar 1, which is Imperial. So if I go to the erection views, my erection view is now detailed with Imperial units. So you must be very careful to confirm which fabricator is your current fabricator when detailing and also in the model. At this time, if we go back to the details, we detailed with Imperial, and we are going to place a bill of material here. Okay, so we see our bill of material on our detail, and everything is in Imperial. Now if I close out, and I'm going to change my fabricator back to my secondary fabricator, Webinar 2, which once again is in metric. And if I go back to Drawing Editor, and I did not redetail this member, I am just opening it. So we see the detail itself has not changed because we did not redetail it. But since I did switch back to the secondary fabricator, we will notice that the bill of material updates to the current fabricator. So I see now that my lengths over here are in metric. So you need to be aware at all times what your current fabricator is. So if you were to plot this detail, you would want to make sure that it was on the master fabricator, so everything gets plotted in Imperial. Next, we are going to go over converting the jobs and fabricators from previous versions. To convert, we're going to place the folders in the corresponding jobs and fabs folders. The fabs folder is strictly used for converting and storing fabricators. SDS2 will prompt which fab to use during the convert. This will be placed inside the job folder during the convert. If none is selected, a default fabricator will be used. So we're going to walk through a convert. Here are my 7.3 job and fab folders. I took these directly out of the 7.3 data directory. Going to go into my C drive here, program data. I find my SDS2 2015, and right here is where I see my fabs folder. Remember, this is just for converting and storing. So if I take my fabricator and copy it over to my fabs folder, and take my job and copy it over to my jobs folder. Okay. So the folders have been placed in their proper folders. Now if I click on Change Project, I can click on my 7.3 job, and here is the message I get. So we're going to click on Convert Current. It will come up with the message that all workstations must be closed. We'll hit Continue. And here's where you select Fabricator to convert and copy into job, or cancel for default Fabricator. So I already have a fabricator that I want to be associated with this job, so I select my 7.3 fabricator and say OK. So the conversion completed here. I see now that I have job 7.3 job and fabricator 7.3 fabricator. So now I can go into my C drive, program data 2015, and inside of my jobs folder I'll have my 7.3 job, and inside of here's where the fabricators are stored. It has now been placed inside as a default fabricator or master fabricator. Other items with the fabricator, if we go into utility functions, we have the rename external fabricators. So that is to rename the ones that are located directly inside the data directory in the fabs folder. Next we have rename job items, which you'll notice now over here on the right hand side, fabricators is now an option. Next we have delete external fabricators. Once again, that's a fab folder right inside the data directory. Delete job items. You now have an option for the fabricators. You cannot delete the master fab, only secondary fabricators. Going to change back into webinar 1 here. Next we're going to look at our member edit redesign. SDS2 2015 has a redesigned member edit window. This is to allow access to more information such as components, limit states and images. There is no longer a user setting since connections will be designed using the values you input. User-defined connections can also be saved directly from the member edit window. So if we go inside our modeling here, first I'm going to add a component to my beam. Okay. We'll open up a beam edit window. You'll notice here there is a tree on the left hand side. This is going to be replacing the tabs that used to be across the top. This tree can be collapsed and open. Headings can be used to open or close sections, so if you did not want to see your left end settings, you could deselect it and collapse it. You can also click on the actual header over here and it will open it or collapse it. General settings and left or right end can be closed, so we can click on general settings and close that. And we can also close our right end settings. Okay. Limit states are displayed below the tree if one of the ends settings is closed. So if we come up here to left end settings, close it, minimize it, we'll notice down here below the tree that we have limit states. These are updated as changes are made inside the edit window, as SDS2 now designs connections on the fly. This means you can make changes to the connection variables without having to exit the edit window and process and create solids. This does not look at the framing situation, so the connection may pass inside of the edit window and give you one type of connection, but then after hitting OK, processing and creating solids, it may fail or give a different connection after the framing situation is applied. Okay. You also have components that are attached to the member are listed here. Components will be covered in a later webinar. So here I have an outrigger, so if I select my outrigger, it opens up everything attached to that component outrigger. Sections are focused on when opened, so if I click on my left end settings, you'll see that it goes right there. This eliminates having to scroll to find a section. But if you already have a section opened, for example my near side clip here, it's already open, but if I double click on it, it will go straight there. Once again, eliminating that scrolling factor. Another item here at the top of our left end settings, you'll see that we have the information. This is still where the change and failed messages will appear. And it can be collapsed. So be aware if this is collapsed and you don't see that red fail flag up there. You will also notice that there is no user option or lock checkbox anymore. There's only the force and graphical. Along the very top up here, you can lock an end just by clicking on the lock icon. So the lock setting is indicated by the lock. If you make a change to the moment, so if I double click on moment here, unlock it, change it to a bolted moment, we'll notice over here in the tree that it is indicated by this eye inside of a circle. So you can have moment turned off, and just by looking at the tree you will know that there is a moment on this member. Turn this on. Okay. To display graphic images to reference each variable, you can turn the Show Images checkbox on in the lower left-hand corner. So if I check this on here, we can scroll down and we will see that there are now images displayed here right inside of the Member Edit window. So you no longer have to go to help if you are unsure of which item it is asking for. With this checked on, it will expand and it will stack the left end and the right end vertically. But if both sections no longer fit horizontally in the window, you can make it bigger. And then you will see the left end settings and the right end settings side by side. You can also collapse that tree so the window doesn't have to be quite as big to have them side by side. Okay. That concludes today's webinar over SDS2 2015 Fabricator and Job in Member Edit Redesign.